This video is an edit of 3 videos I made criticizing former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. Besides a few edits I made to make it more cohesive as one video, overall, the criticism is still the same. The purpose of these videos were to deconstruct a few stances Ramaswamy had that I disagreed with, and while I do curse frequently in this video and raged quite a bit, I will not tolerate any harassment of Ramaswamy, as he's a human being like the rest of us, and in the end, we all just want to make this world a better place. Anyways, despite this trilogy being flawed quite a bit, looking back at it, I hope you enjoyed what was my first shot at political video essays.
So the first thing is my first term in office, 75% headcount reduction across the federal employee base, 50% done in the first year. Take the government agencies that should not exist, from the FBI, to the IRS, to the ATF, to the CDC, to the Department of Education. Get in there and shut them down. You know it with me that if somebody works for you and you cannot fire them, that means they don't work for you. It means, in some way, you work for them.
To make sure that he'll have authority over these people, he wants to add in term limits for them. So basically, he's going to remove all of these organizations and then put in organizations that are exactly the same, but they have term limits. Sounds reasonable, right? But just to be sure, I'm going to do a quick search. The president is responsible for implementing and enforcing the laws written by Congress, and to that end, appoints the heads of the federal agencies, including the cabinet. This is from the official White House website. So the president can appoint the heads of the federal agencies, so they can do that at least. Can they fire them? Yeah, they can. Donald Trump, the person who you got the idea to shut down the federal agencies from, literally fired the fucking director of the FBI. The president has the power to do what they want with the heads of the federal agencies like the FBI. Maybe they can't fire the actual officers within the organizations, but they aren't directly working under you. They're directly working under the directors, and those directors are working directly under you. So yeah, you have the authority, so what are you complaining about? Not to mention, such big layovers are going to have a dent in the economy, you know, the one thing Republicans are supposed to be good at not doing. According to the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, there are more than 4 million federal employees and annuities. Vivek Ramaswamy wants to reduce the federal workforce by 75%, so that's about 3 million people losing their jobs. That's what he promised if he gets elected into presidency. Not to mention, for some reason, he keeps calling the federal agencies corrupt, and his solution is to fire 3/4 of the employees, which is incredibly stupid, because if your solution is to fire the employees, you're saying that it's the employees who are corrupt. But how the fuck can 4 million federal employees be all on this huge corruption scam together? Gosh, there are thousands of agents in the FBI alone, and you're saying they're all corrupt? Even if it is only the big bosses that are corrupt, he can fire them when and if he becomes president. He can fucking fire them! What is he fucking complaining about? You know what I find funny? Vivek Ramaswamy just so happened to make a video called "We Live in a 1776 Moment," which is funny because if he becomes Donald Trump's VP and they win, by the time they leave office, it'll be a 1781 moment, you know. The year the Articles of Confederation were executed? However, if we get a Democrat after him and Trump for the next 8 years, it'll be a 1789 moment, a bit after the Constitution gets ratified. Yeah, I think the world is giving us a warning sign about what is to come for the next few years. Speaking of all this supernatural stuff, you do not need to make God is real as one of your main talking points. A majority of this world and country is religious and is monotheistic on top of that, so they already believe that sentence. You do not need to make that as one of your points. What is this, some cheap gimmick to get the majority of the country liking you and supporting you? Well, whatever it is, it's pretty obvious Ramaswamy is deeply religious. Well, according to him, I'm also pretty deep into my religion. So deep to the point, it's a fault. Oh, wanna guess what our religion is? Yup, you guessed it! The belief we should reduce our use of fossil fuels!
Climate change agenda is a hoax. So the reality is more people are dying of bad climate change policies than they are of actual climate change. COVID was bad. What's coming with this climate agenda is far worse. We should not be bending the knee to this new religion. That is what it is. It is a substitute for a modern religion.
Let's address his argument here. Now, unlike most conservatives, he's admitting global warming exists, and that temperatures are rising each year. Good job, Ramaswamy. You have enough common sense to at least understand that. However, he's ignoring the much bigger issue with global warming. It isn't just going to make winters a little less cool and summers a little bit more hot, it's going to lead to rising sea levels, destroying a whole lot of infrastructure and people's homes and businesses. It's going to lead to desertified farmlands, you know, what farmers need to make a living. The group of people you use to make the argument that coal is necessary for human flourishing. Oh yes, he believes that. Human flourishing requires fossil fuels. That's one of his 10 commandments. Anyways, let's continue with the dangers of warming up the earth. We'll get stronger and more frequent hurricanes and much more and way worse wildfires. The weather will be more extreme because, you know, weather is formed through warm, moist air. And since carbon dioxide leads to more heat being trapped and temperatures increasing in general, a lot of glaciers will start to melt. And guess what's trapped in glaciers? Carbon fucking dioxide! The glaciers melting is leading to more heat being trapped, leading to this process being done much faster. I want to take this moment to thank H-Bomber Guy, who made this extensive video on climate change denial that made me realize that climate change is an absolutely relevant threat. Yes, Ramaswamy, coal is letting humans flourish. This generation of humans flourish. What about the next ones? You know how the people of the 1920s have gone down as a generation who kept spending and spending recklessly until the economic crash and the other generation suffered? Well, that's what's going to happen. The people of the 2020s will be going down as a generation who kept spending and spending and living their lives with as much prosperity as possible and leaving the 2030s people as the broke generation. Thanks a lot, conservatives! Ryan Binkley, you're fine though. Thank you, Ryan Binkley, for proving that not all Republicans are delusional, and some do know climate change exists. Anyways, I know a lot of Ramaswamy's fans are going to be like, he knows that climate change exists, he just doesn't believe in the agenda, which is making the threat of global warming look closer than it actually is. Well, guess what? He's making the threat of dying from cold temperatures look much more related to cold than it actually is. Oh, you seriously think that the reason for all these people dying is because not enough coal is being mined? Fuck no! Have you ever considered that the deaths could be from being outside in the cold much longer than their bodies could handle? Have you ever considered the deaths could be from falling into ice lakes? Have you ever considered the deaths could be from being trapped in the snow? Have you ever considered that? Do you seriously think all these people died freezing inside their own homes because, oh no, the coal was too expensive, too bad we didn't mine more? No! I'm sure some people die that way, but I highly doubt that more people die from that than extreme heat in general. But let's just say, hypothetically, for the sake of the argument, see conservatives, I'm speaking your language to make it easier for you to understand. Let's just say, hypothetically, for the sake of the argument, that everything I just said about climate change was wrong. Sea levels aren't going to be rising, weather isn't going to be more extreme, farmlands aren't going to be desertified. Let's just say that for the sake of the argument. A lot more people are still going to die from pollution and cold temperatures. So yeah, burning more fossil fuels isn't just going to harm the future generations, it's going to harm the generations at the present! You know, since we're talking about fossil fuels, we might as well talk about one of America's biggest fossil fuel sellers, Russia. You know, Russia, they've been selling us a lot of oil, and they've been benefiting a lot from it. In terms of short-term investment, of course, because in the long term, all of us that have common sense know that using so much fossil fuels isn't really going to be that good. But it's a good short-term investment. So naturally, there's some people in the US, like Ramaswamy, who wants to sell something that will benefit the US, specifically in the short term. Guess what they're planning on selling? You guessed it, they're planning on selling Ukraine!
The most important element is Russia exit its military alliance with China. We make a hard commitment that NATO not admit Ukraine to NATO.
Let's break down the deal. Russia has been attacking Ukraine for a couple of years, and has been hurting all parties involved. Russia and Ukraine are losing their people, and NATO is losing its taxpayer money. We want a deal that will help all three parties. In this deal, Russia gets what they want, which is that Ukraine isn't part of NATO. NATO gets what they want, which is that they don't have to worry about China and Russia ever teaming up on them, but what does Ukraine get? Ukraine gets rejected the invitation to join NATO, which is one of the two reasons why they've been fighting back. All their fighting goes down to waste, whereas Putin gets exactly what he wants, even though he was the one committing the war crimes. However, I hear you. Ukraine also fought back because they wanted to keep their land in independence. Well, let's skip ahead and see the other thing Ramaswamy is giving to Putin.
And then here we'd freeze the current lines of control.
What?
Freeze the current
You
lines of
would
control.
give Putin
I
everything
wouldn't
he's
give him
stolen?
anything. I would freeze the current lines of control.
This isn't a compromise anymore. Putin gets exactly what he wants. Ukraine isn't a part of NATO, and he gets closer to building back the Soviet Union. As for Ukraine, it loses its land too. So all the fighting, all the lives that were lost in war, all go to waste. Sure, they get peace now, and yes, they wanted peace, but not through this. If they just wanted peace, they would have surrendered a long time ago. Take the founding fathers. When the colonists were being ruled by the British, they could have just kept going on and kept the peace. But they wanted freedom, so they fought back. If the colonists were forced to surrender to the British at some point by France because France was losing money and didn't want to continue to fight, and then France decided to negotiate with Great Britain in order to benefit themselves, then that would be a pretty big betrayal by France, and the colonists wouldn't have gained anything besides peace. But that's not what it was about, wasn't it? Well, that's exactly what's happening. The United States is deciding what's happening with Ukraine to benefit themselves, and Ukraine is the one who loses because everything they fought for went to waste. Yeah, they got peace, but that's not what it's about, isn't it? Russia and the United States are the only parties actually getting something from this. If Ramaswamy wants to stop supplying Ukraine, then fine, but you're dealing with a country as if it is yours, which it isn't. Yes, Ukraine is depending on us, so while we do have power over it, that doesn't mean you should abuse it. Supporting someone for such a long time, promising them help, and then suddenly betraying them is what you call a break in trust. And later on in the interview, you understand that Ramaswamy doesn't give a shit about Ukraine and just cares about the United States' interests, which is fine, except this isn't some trade deal with Ukraine. He's giving it away as if it is his, which it isn't.
You would give this area they've stolen back to the Russians, right? So you're telling
I would not.
You're telling
it would
every
be conditioned.
You're telling every
I would not do anything other than we get what we want.
Notice how he says we get what we want. He doesn't care about Ukraine, even though this is their land and their people we're talking about. It's them who we promise care for. He just cares about the gain the United States could potentially get. Notice how he said potentially? Because let's be honest, Putin officially canceling Russia's military alliance with China isn't going to be stopping any team-ups against the United States. In fact, Putin winning the war, but the United States being the first to hold the white flag will show that the US isn't interested in any more preventive measures of Russia bringing back the Soviet Union. So yeah, I think it's clear that Putin will only be encouraged to gain more power from this. First, before we get into all of this crap, let's talk about the title. Gave an LGBT protester the mic. Watch what happens next. What kind of title is this? First off, the person who we gave the mic to was a supporter of LGBT, not a protester. Ex-protester is someone who protests X. An LGBT protester is someone who protests LGBT. Just look at the fucking definition! Anyways, I see some Ramaswamy fans going down in the comment section saying that ex-protester also means a protester who is X. And you know what? That is fair game. The person Ramaswamy gave the mic to was an LGBT person. Except, there's one issue. What the hell was she protesting? She was protesting nothing, because the thing she and Ramaswamy argued, which was trans surgery, she was on the supporting side. And guess what? It's already legal in the United States. Ramaswamy brought it up himself in the video. I don't like the practice of trans surgeries either. It's not giving any advantage to the person who takes the surgery and just takes away an ability that could come in handy one day. However, it is legal in the US, so really, the protesting side is Ramaswamy and I, because we don't like the practice. And what is the second sentence? Watch what happens next. What is this? A Dharman video? What happens next will shock you. And like a Dharman video, it blew up, no matter how unrealistic the video was. Oh yes, Ramaswamy's video is unrealistic like a Dharman video, except the word unrealistic would be a light term for this video. The accurate term would not be a lie, but just plain stupidity. We're not going to go through the whole video, just the important parts. If you want to watch the video in its entirety yourself, the link is in the description, because I'm only going through some of it. Come on, spare me some brain cells. I already suffer enough hearing Ramaswamy's fanboys.
The same movement that said that the sex of the person you're attracted to is hardwired on the day you're born. That was the premise of the gay rights movement, for it to count as a civil right. That movement is now saying that your own biological sex is totally fluid over the course of your life.
Let's see what he has to say. So first, he talks about the gay movement and the whole premise of it, which is that you're gay at birth. According to him, that was the argument they had to make in order for gay marriage to count as a civil right. It seems like he's okay with it, right? Well, if you take a brief moment to look at his Twitter, he tries to fight the argument by saying, even though there's no gay gene. It doesn't really look like Ramaswamy likes the argument. According to him, that's the argument they have to make for gay marriage to count as a civil right. But since the argument's devoid of logic, according to him, that clearly indicates he doesn't think the argument should have won them the right. Now, originally, in the script, I go down a rant deconstructing a bunch of anti-gay arguments conservatives like to throw. However, since this video is about Ramaswamy, I'm just going to save those arguments for a later video, probably one about the Daily Wire. Now, let's talk about what he says next, which is about trans people. First, Ramaswamy claims that trans people claim that
your own biological sex is totally fluid over the course of your life.
There's an issue with that. That's the complete opposite of what they believe. The whole argument trans people make is that yes, you're stuck with your biological sex. However, that is not to be confused with gender, which is what they believe is completely fluid. That's basically the whole argument. No, seriously, that is the central argument for the trans movement. If one of your 10 commandments is that there are only 2 genders, then it's safe to assume that you actually know the arguments the other side has. Because, you know, if you ever hypothetically came across a person with the media training you have and wants to have an argument with you regarding this topic because you seem really intent on proving your argument, they're going to need to know their arguments in advance if you have any chance of winning. Unless you try the classic spurting out shit technique, where you're constantly spurting out shit at such a fast pace that the other side will just start fucking up. It worked for Ben Shapiro, it worked for Matt Walsh, it definitely worked for Ramaswamy. Speaking of which, how did this video get 3 million views again? Like, I'm sure he's got way better videos than this, but the algorithm shows this video stupidity instead of his regular over-exaggerations. Anyways, let's jump ahead a little and see what he has to say about the feminist movement.
So the same movement, and by the way, let's think about the women's rights movement in this country, which said there's many ways to be a woman. You can have long hair, short hair, you can wear a skirt, you can wear jeans. Now says that, oh, if actually you want to behave a certain way, that means you're a man.
First off, you conservatives can't complain about intersectionality when you're categorizing 2 different movements into one. Being anti-trans isn't limited to men, as there are plenty of feminist women who completely disagree with the trans movement. And no, this is not what the trans movement is about. I've known a handful of trans people in my life, and while they do give some lame reasons as to why they feel they're a certain gender, they never said, oh, you're behaving like this, you're a woman. No, that's not what it's about. This movement is not about labeling other people's gender. This movement is about people accepting the gender they feel like they are. They are not telling people that you have to behave a certain way to truly own your gender. Let me repeat that. They are not telling people that you have to behave a certain way to truly own your gender. It's a basic concept. They just feel like a different gender and they just want you to accept that. That's basically it. This isn't like some huge plan to reassign everyone's gender. Nobody's going around telling you what gender you are, which actually is what we're doing. Ramaswamy, did you just mix up the different movements? I mean, I don't blame you, it's a fucking mess. But dude, correcting the gender other people say they are is what we're doing. There's the science movement, our movement, which is that you're born a certain gender and you should be accepting it instead of forcing society to acknowledge your preferred gender. And there's the trans movement, which is that your gender is fluid. Stop confusing them! Anyways, let's see what he says next.
So I think that the hypocrisies go all the way down. And I'll tell you what's going on. You can't believe both of those things at the same time if you're operating according to principles of sheer logic. But you can if you're adopting a faith, a cult-like belief system.
Actually, you can believe in not only the feminist movement and the trans movement at the same time, but also the gay movement too. The feminist movement is about how women can be limited to the traits we think women should be having and deserve to be who they want to be. The trans movement is about how your gender is separate from your sex. The gay movement is about how it's okay if you're attracted to someone of the same sex. all three of these movements can be believed at the same time. You know, I find it funny how Ramaswamy is complaining about how you can't believe all of these movements at the same time, yet is busy trying to connect other religions to his. I'm sorry, but I think it's obvious that these 4 books of Hinduism aren't just repeating the phrase, God exists. These religions are specific, so specific to a fault, because if they did overlap, we wouldn't be seeing conflicts between Hindus and Muslims in the fucking UK of all countries, would we? We've never had a huge conflict between the feminist movement and the trans movement, have we? No! Because you can believe in both of them at the same time. And if Hinduism does approve of a belief system such as Christianity, doesn't that mean it will also approve of a belief system such as atheism? Because atheism is the belief system in which science is the truth and that rationality rules. It's a system too, just like Christianity. You can't deny one system and approve of the other. That's hypocrisy. And cults aren't cults because they don't operate on logic. Take the Jared Leto cult, for example. It's a cult. Not because it's impossible to praise Jared Leto while sticking to logic, but rather because it's obsession going too far. Anyways, I'm going to jump ahead and see what he has to say about the so-called tyranny of the minority.
But right now, we don't have a tyranny of the majority. What we have in this country right now is a tyranny of the minority. That's what we have right now, a tyranny of the fringe minority that tells you to shut up, sit down, and do as you're told. No, we have to stand for what is true.
A tyranny of the minority would mean that the minority will have power to do stuff others don't want to do. Because, you know, a tyrant is all about forcing stuff. But that's not the case in this country, is it? No. Being a minority doesn't just grant you all of these cool powers and rights. No. What we're seeing here regarding the trans movement is that there's a lot of people who understand trans people and want to support them. It's by choice that these people are supporting the minority. People have the right to choose in this country. That's what we see with all of this voting. Or did Trump's false information about elections being rigged get into your mind? There are other ridiculous conspiracy theories Ramaswamy has claimed, such as the Great Replacement theory, which is quite stupid considering the fact that he is a second-generation immigrant himself, and has spoken about how his parents came here for educational purposes. Which makes sense because that's one of the reasons why people immigrate to the United States. Are you saying that you yourself and your family have been fueled in the Democrats' massive plan to remove pure-blood Americans? No, that's different because I'm Asian. And Ramaswamy's claims aren't just limited to conspiracy theories as stupid as this. He once claimed that January 6th was an inside job to cover up the truth behind 9/11. Like, what do these two things have to do with each other? Like, the only similarities I see is that these are both conspiracy theories that can help get extremists onto your side. Wait a second. And his ridiculous claims aren't just limited to conspiracy theories, but also include individuals. For example, Ramaswamy once called Nikki Haley corrupt because she is making too much money, according to his calculations. Ramaswamy even once claimed that Ibram Kendi and Ayanna Presley were amongst the
modern grand wizards of the modern KKK.
He claims Kendi and Presley are equal to grand masters of the KKK before praising Trump and completely ignoring the absurd amount of racist claims Trump has made throughout his presidency, and even ignoring Mike Pence's accounts of January 6th before talking about how non-democratic it was not to Trump be in the ballets when Trump himself has tried to rip apart the United States democracy. There's just something inconsistent about Ramaswamy's claims. There's no actual way he believes everything he's saying, right? Well, let's take a look at some of the most popular U.S. politicians and political commentators.
We need a leader that wrote The Art of the Deal.
And it puts all the low-lying areas on the coast underwater, right? Which, let's say all of that happens. You think that people aren't going to just sell their homes and move?
We've never been a racist country. I know. I faced racism when I was growing up.
Do I believe in climate change? No. I think the climate always changes, I guess.
In fact, it seems rather clear that Black Americans are doing better here today than they would be had their ancestors generations ago never been brought to these shores.
The change from wishing fellow Americans Merry Christmas to wishing them Happy Holidays is a very significant development.
No, nonsensical claims are exclusive to the Republican Party.
But am I saying that I'm better than you? I guess I'm going a little further than you are. Yeah, I'm fucking better than you, okay? Much better than you. You are garbage.
You can cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance. Okay, ooh, Ben got really scared from that. She tried to intimidate him a little bit. Boy, did that work. That little boy, I guess he was afraid he was gonna be broken like a boy.
Like, how do you think of your viewers to just stream your break? Dude, what am I supposed to do, die?
We choose truth over facts.
Oh, independents and smaller party affiliates? You thought you were fine? Nah.
I don't think there's any scientific question that vaccines cause autism if you actually read the science.
Oh, back so soon? Damn, I thought I had more stupid clips from independent party candidates. Unfortunately, I can't really get that many stupid clips because, well, there aren't that many clips from independents and smaller party affiliates to begin with. But you guys get the message. Despite how ridiculous these claims are, chances are, Ramaswamy actually does believe them. But how did we get here, though? Let's try to figure that out. To understand this, we're going to need to break down the stupid claims. First, we have Ramaswamy's strong opposition to all these federal taxes. I agree that we have a lot of stupid taxes, but Ramaswamy's belief is going to a different level. He hates the spending on all these different federal organizations. He hates the transitioning to clean energy. He hates taxpayer money going to Ukraine, etc. Second, we have Ramaswamy's anti-woke stance. He hates being grouped together with other cultures he doesn't necessarily like, and he isn't interested in the team up against white people. Makes sense. I hate that too. Ramaswamy takes that to another level by calling Kennedy and Presley the modern grandmasters of the KKK because of a couple of woke statements they said. So why is he so obsessed with a libertarian economy and an anti-woke society to the point he says these stupid claims and it makes sense in his head? Well, let's go back to his childhood. Vivek Ramaswamy was born a second-generation immigrant whose parents came from India. He was born and raised in Ohio. Now, according to him, in 8th grade, he was a nerdy kid and got pushed down the stairs. Now, I'm going to assume he got bullied multiple times before because according to him, his teacher told his parents that
you need to get him out of the school.
I doubt one instance of getting bullied all the way in 8th grade would convince his teacher to convince his parents to move him to a different school. So I'm assuming there were multiple incidents. Anyways, so clearly Ramaswamy had a horrible time in his school, and Ramaswamy says...
So they ended up sending me to a private school.
Since he's specifying private school and doesn't say another private school, that means this school he was tormented in was a public school, and the school he found peace in was a private Christian school. This will come in as useful information later on. From there, Ramaswamy talks about how he goes to college and becomes a successful businessman. A very successful businessman, obviously. Net worth of $960 million, and that being done by a second-generation middle-class immigrant. That is a lot of success. Well, Ramaswamy talks about how it was capitalism that made him so successful. I mean, that makes sense. You can't just make that much money that easily. Unless you're corrupt, like Nikki Haley apparently is. You can tell how much he's indebted to capitalism, as one of his 10 commandments is that capitalism lifts people out of poverty. Capitalism is a big deal for him, because if we go back to Ramaswamy's family's origins, well, Ramaswamy mentioned how they came into the United States with not a lot of money, and guess what? India's constitution has mentions of socialism. Now, I'm not saying that socialism was what made them stay at the class level they were in India, but there's a major difference between the economics of India and the United States. The United States obviously being the more capitalistic country, and well, seeing how Ramaswamy probably noticed that difference, he likely believes that capitalism is the ultimate economic system, because pretty much as soon as they moved to a capitalist country, their family grew wealthy. This brings us back to the two major oppositions Ramaswamy has. The opposition against anti-capitalistic approaches and the opposition against wokeness. Ramaswamy has a strong opposition against anti-capitalistic approaches because he himself is indebted to capitalism. He has had a good experience with capitalism, and well, obviously his life is the only life he has ever lived through, and since his life was made so much better thanks to capitalism, it makes sense why he believes capitalism is an excellent system overall. It's such a great system where the hardworking and innovative people are rewarded, which is why it's so stupid that the hard workers are being taxed too much. The taxes themselves are stupid, such as the tax to support all the federal agencies, that is taking his and his fellow hard workers' money and then using that money to give resources such as security and a good education to other people. He hates how there are stupid restrictions that are blocking out future rich people from using this really efficient energy source, coal, because people are being too worried about this stupid climate change thing. He hates how the United States is taking businessmen's money and is spending it on helping Ukraine. Ramaswamy also has a strong opposition against wokeness because he himself has been treated well by Christians. He went to a public school in Ohio full of diversity and modern secular beliefs, but that sucked because a couple out of the hundreds of good kids in that school turned out to be bullies. But when he went to a Christian private school, he just never got bullied because the kids were too busy worrying about getting a scolding from their strict parents about how disappointed they were about them being gay. Okay, that last part was a joke. Ramaswamy just had a significantly better experience in his private Christian school, naturally making him think that public schools as a whole were pretty bad, and also making him feel bad for all the reverse racism white people have been receiving, causing him to start his war against wokeness and reverse racism, and also making him starting to get carried away when discussing this topic. I myself got a little carried away there with that joke towards the end. In fact, I've started to realize just how similar Ramaswamy and I were, and how my own linear childhood experiences have caused me to be extremely biased. Fuck! It doesn't have to be childhood experiences. It could be any type of experience. But let me just stick with childhood experiences for this video, for the sake of not getting carried away. Before we get into the comparisons between Ramaswamy and I, let's quickly talk about other people who have said stuff so stupid to the point it's hard to believe they actually believed it crap. Let's start off with Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro has made a lot of claims, stupid or not, that can easily go back to traditional religious beliefs. His belief that abortion doctors should be persecuted is not something you hear from modern day folks. And his strong advocating that homosexuality is a mental illness and that gay marriage is a danger to the institution of marriage can also go back to the religious childhood. Not to mention, his belief that people can just
sell their homes and move
if their homes are in threat of getting flooded by rising sea levels is just absurd and is clear evidence of the reluctance to change to modern times, since everything just made sense during his religious childhood. Let's go to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. next. If there's one political view RFK Jr. is known to have, it's his infamous opinion on vaccines. Yup, he's one of the few people left in the United States who still believes that vaccines cause autism, despite all the evidence that vaccines causing autism being false and having been debunked. And well, considering the fact that growing up as a teenager after his father's death, he went through a lot of drug abuse, yeah, I think you can tell why he hates drugs that are even as medically important as vaccines are. In fact, this could have also shaped his views on the legalization of drugs, as he hates it so much to the point where he's one of the few politicians who... Oh, wait. He still believes in the legalization of drugs. Yeah, his past experiences with drugs have nothing to do with his belief about vaccines. It's probably just what H-Bomber Guy has previously said about anti-vaccine advocates, being that they do know vaccines are good, but are saying bad stuff about it nonetheless to attract conspiracy theorists and play on the emotions of people with autistic close ones. Yeah, I'm just going to go back to comparing Ramaswamy and I. So, remember the joke I made about private Christian schools? Yeah, that was out of spite based on my experience with private Christian schools. You see, I spent my entire kindergarten year in a private Christian school in Nebraska. Worst school year of my life. As soon as I moved to New England and attended the public schools there, oh my goodness, things became so much better. So yeah, I had a reverse experience compared to Ramaswamy. When I did learn about Ramaswamy's reverse experience though, it slowly became clear to me how both of our school experiences had significantly shaped both our views, and how Ramaswamy and I ended up becoming so different, despite the fact that we were both libertarians at heart. I've grown to like New England's public schools, and naturally became more secular and democratic alongside my community, and Ramaswamy has grown to like Ohio's private Christian schools and naturally became more religious and Republican alongside his community. Otherwise, there are a lot of similarities between Ramaswamy and I. Both of us are second-generation Indian Hindu immigrants. Both of us are / were nerdy kids in our school, and both of us play piano and tennis. In fact, speaking of music, both of us have been known to rap the most random shit. Him rapping Eminem, and me rapping Starbomb.
I'll know you like Yoshi, show you things you've never seen. The mushroom's now mega, if you know what I mean. Sasaka!
There's a lot of similarities between the two of us when it comes to policies. Both of us are in favor of the legalization of drugs. Both of us are around the center when it comes to the Israel and Palestine conflict. Both of us are in favor of capitalism and a free market. Both of us are in favor of freedom of speech, even though I have criticized them in the last two parts for how far Ramaswamy has been going with that freedom. Both of us even believe that there are only two genders, which is something I never thought would be considered a big similarity. In short words, though, we are quite similar, and there are some aspects of him that I honestly have respect for. His excellent ability to confidently speak and maneuver through unexpected attacks during debates, for one. His ability to connect with his audience very well is another thing I admire about Ramaswamy. There are so many similarities between the both of us, but I've only known about these similarities because I spent so much time with his trilogy. If I put in effort, I could find similarities between people like fucking Dennis Prager and I. You can do the same. You can find dozens of similarities between people you dislike and yourself too. After all of us want to make this world a better place. We just have different plans on how to do it. Maybe, just maybe, if we all focus on our similarities instead of our differences, maybe we could come to peace and figure out solutions that will work for all of us. That was an excellent conclusion, so I guess you'll be giving constructive feedback onwards instead of... Fuck no! Oh, you thought I was being serious about my peacemaking conclusion. Well, yeah, why else? Views, buddy, views! Come on, a chill conclusion can work for a video like this, but an entire chill video on YouTube about politics? Do you not care about money? Well... Come on, there's a lot of people to criticize. Gotta catch them all, am I right? I mean... Come on, we have the Daily Wire's denial of climate change, PragerU's spreading of propaganda. Come on. Well, I guess... Let's go.